Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation from JKL Media, where Lou, Karen, and I are all discussing every Babylon 5 in chronological order. We have been off a week, and so we've already talked almost 30 minutes just catching up. So I warn you, this may be a long one. Lou, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good morning to everybody out there.
Yeah. And Karen, how are you?
I'm good. How about I say afternoon and evening
Yes.
for
Yep.
And
those
I'm,
Cover all
listening
the
a
time
little.
zones. Yeah.
That's
yes.
right.
And I can do good evening.
Mm.
Uh,
Good evening.
yeah, we are talking Lines of Communication, the 11th episode of the season 4, Babylon 5, originally aired April 28th, 1997. I'm in a little bit of a quandary because I remember the 4th season being rock and roll, and I'm going, I didn't remember some of these.
Yeah, this
Oh,
is music.
yeah. So but we're going to talk about it anyway. We're going to have fun. So, Karen, since you spoke up about music, quick thoughts about the episode.
Yeah. Not my favorite, definitely. And there's some tropes that are being subverted here. Will they, won't they? That kind of thing. There is stuff to talk about, but I wasn't overjoyed with this episode.
Lou, how about you?
I'm feeling a great relief because I didn't care for this episode very much at all either. It was just really clunky at times, and yeah, really clunky, especially the Franklin stuff at the very end of the episode. I thought was totally ridiculous. Anyhow, but I
And
I did like it from the perspective that it is mirroring the whole social media bubble that people live in, and that you get one view of the world through, depending on what corner of the universe you're in. And it's going to be interesting going forward to see how Babylon 5's version of events is going to play when they start broadcasting. Sheridan says that they have truth on their side, and I think we've seen how that might be true, but the wheels of truth, and I'll just add justice, move very slowly and very frustratingly. So I don't know how successful they're going to be. And I'm going to be interested to see how realistically the show portrays that going forward.
yeah, I really like Richard Biggs as an actor. And I know that you guys have had a problem sometimes with the way they've written Franklin.
Yeah, no,
But
Richard Biggs is
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Franklin is not.
But I do feel like this was not, I felt a little bit of acting, right? Like the old Saturday Night Live skit, a little bit more, oh, look at me, I'm acting.
Yeah.
And
Acting.
before we hit record, we were catching up that, pull the curtain back a little bit. Karen had said that she did not get a chance to rewatch the episode yesterday as we're
That
recording.
might have been one of my motivating factors,
Right.
but I
Yeah.
just didn't want
Yeah, I
to.
thought so,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to say it out loud.
Yeah.
Well, and that's and I didn't want to say it till we were recording. Same thing. Last night I pulled up the DVR, or I pulled up me, and I said, no, I'll know enough to talk about it. I don't need to
Right.
see this again.
I don't know that I'll be crying if we miss something. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So yeah, let's get into it. John is still obsessed with ISN, their version of Fox News. Oh, yep, I said it. And this is bothering him. And when Susan is like, man, you got to let this go. And I do believe this is not the first example, but an early example of hate watching.
Mm.
Like sometimes people watch a series just to hate it, or they watch whether it's CNN, MSNBC, Fox,
Under the dome.
yeah, whatever, just to be angry.
Right.
And I thought it was interesting that he makes, and I'm going to skip all the way to the end, he makes her get up in the middle of the night, makes
Right.
her get dressed just so he can say, we're going to put on a show, right?
Mhm.
Like the
Right.
old Andy Rooney, Judy Garland movies almost. You're going to be the voice of resistance. I,
which
I
was not important enough to wake her up, to be
yeah,
honest.
especially when Susan talks about she has trouble waking up when it's dark outside,
Hmm.
and they go, "It's always dark outside." No, Lou, let's start with you. Just any of this storyline you want to cover, your thoughts on. You shared a little bit about this truth, basically, and I do love the idea of positive propaganda, right? Like you're gonna spin the wheel for your thought. And I am very liberal. My wife watches MSNBC every night, so we know we're doing slanty news. But in our mind, we feel like they are saying the truth, yet they're giving the facts, but slanting it toward a certain bias. I feel like other networks, OSN, Fox, whoever you want, and I'm biased, just distort the facts, not report the facts to a slant, but actually distort them. So anyway, Lou, now that I'm off my soapbox, thoughts.
It's interesting because in the you have to it's difficult. You have to put yourself back in the time period in which the show was aired, and the 90s isn't really that far away chronologically, but I think sociologically things have changed quite a bit, especially if you're like us. We're all plugged into social media, whether we want to be or not. It's just a byproduct of doing podcasts and whatnot. And I remember a time, take documentaries. When I was growing up, documentaries were always done in a very clinical, objective style. And over the years, even documentaries I find have become much more subjective and less objective. And that's what we're seeing today, obviously, quite a bit. And within the framework of this show, I think the approach that probably is playing out is much more akin to World War II propaganda, or they had that in MASH. They had, was it Tokyo Sue or something like that? I can't remember the name of
I
that.
want to say Tokyo Rose, but no,
Tokyo
it may
Rose,
be.
yes,
Yeah.
that's it. Yes. So it's that kind of pretty simplistic propaganda, whereas today it's much more, I think it's still pretty blatant, but the technology allows you to manipulate things more because you can cut a clip or edit it in a certain manner. And it's now with AI, you could wholesale make a fake, a really fake trailer and make it look realistic. So what the show is doing is from a time period that's a little bit simpler from what we're living in today. So I'm trying to look at it from that perspective, but it's difficult to get out of your own frame of reference. And I'm interested to see how it plays out in the show. It's a lot more complicated nowadays. And this is going to be my take a drink. This is going to be my Garibaldi moment. I would have much rather seen, if they wanted to give Susan something to do in this episode, I would have liked to seen her go to Garibaldi and say, "What's the deal with you guys? What's going on?" They're keeping Garibaldi so isolated from the rest of the cast. And I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but it seems awfully deliberate to me that he's not interacting with anybody else hardly from the rest of the cast. Whether that changes going forward in the show, we'll have to see, but it's awfully weird how isolated he's become. And it's like that whole storyline is between Sheridan and Garibaldi is in a vacuum. Franklin doesn't come to talk to him. Yeah, he's not on the Babylon 5 anymore, but he was there before. Susan had somewhat of a dialogue with him, but she never talks to him anymore. Even Zach, who wants him back, doesn't go talk to him anymore. It's just, I just think the show is not exploring the characters in a way that I think would benefit the overall story arc. There's obviously GMS had certain storylines he wanted to play out, and I have to view it on what's presented and not what I wanted presented. But I can't help but feel underwhelmed by these storylines where characters are deliberately being isolated from one another just for the sake of prolonging a drama that, if it's that trope, if these people would just talk to each other, this whole thing would be over in 5 minutes. But instead they're prolonging it by keeping them away from each other and not having any of the other characters interact with Garibaldi just really bugs me. And I'll leave it there because I know people are getting tired of me talking about this.
No,
but,
not at all. In fact,
that's where my mind goes to when I'm watching this. Like,
yeah.
is this scene, like this Sheridan Susan scene, is, I think they're going like for a screwball 30s 40 comedy kind of riff or something like that. but I didn't find it funny at all. And nothing against the actors. They did the best with the material that they had to do with, but I just think that screen time could have been better utilized to or strengthen the other threads that are already in existence, because this is like a one-off kind of thing and it's done and gone. And to me, it wasn't really that funny.
So let's, I want to just, I'm trying to be very careful. I don't want to spoil anything, but also I'm just giving you thoughts to think about. Both of you have seen Ted Lasso, correct?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. So during the second season of Ted Lasso, they specifically made where Nate and Ted never had a conversation solo.
Mhm.
So that when he exploded at the end of the second season, spoilers if you haven't watched Ted Lasso, I'll keep it generic, there was a little bit of explanation. So my hope, and once again, it's been a while since I've totally watched this series in a row. I have a general idea. Maybe this is one of the reasons they're setting this up, so that just to think about it. And we'll see if it's effective or not only after the fact, because there are times when we go, yeah, I see what you're getting through, but it didn't stick the landing.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Karen,
Yeah.
your
And
thoughts.
that made me hate Nate,
Yeah.
as long as we're talking about that. And I think that was the point of that whole mechanic on the show, was to
Yeah.
show that Ted had stopped praising him.
Right.
And that was part of why he hated, just to talk about
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
And I really hope that it's not the case here. Please don't say anything.
No,
This
I
is
won't.
what I say to my husband. I say things like, hey, I wish this, and don't say anything.
Yeah.
I'm just venting.
Sure.
I said that a lot about Kosh with him, and he smiled. Yeah. I said, Kosh is the worst. And he just went, okay, shut up, you. Yeah. And I was going to echo your sentiment. I don't care if people are mad. This sounds terrible, but we're supposed to be talking about how we really feel about this. I also hate that we're not seeing Garibaldi, that we're not getting any interaction. And I don't like to say, hey, maybe behind the scenes, Zach is talking to him. Why not show us that they're in contact with each other, even if it's just for a minute? They showed that he is completely separated from everyone else. And when they do talk to each other, it's a huge fight. And I know we brought up that he might have had brainwashing, whether he's separating himself on purpose or because of that. I don't know, but it really makes me angry. So back to the topic at hand, we were talking about how John wants to do this radio-free Babylon 5 thing. And there was lots of questions I have about it. Why Susan? Because why did they pick her for all these assignments that I wouldn't think she would want to do and she might not be good at? Diplomacy? Okay. And now being broadcast, having her be the face of Babylon 5. Not that I think she's bad, but is she your first choice, really? I don't know. It just seems weird. And she has plenty of stuff to do already. I have some issues with that, but I get it. She's a major cast member. They want her to be on the show more, blah, blah, blah. I get that. I think it's weird. I do like the idea of them broadcasting. I don't know who they're going to be broadcasting to because Earth has shut them out. So are they going to broadcast to Mars and some of the other colonies and hope that trickles down? I don't know. And people traveling through on Babylon 5 and what have you. But I don't know. I just thought that was weird. And I think maybe they're making it look like he is obsessing about it because of his relationship with Delenn, that it's not going anywhere right now. And so he needs something else to focus on. There's a thing, I'm going to generalize here, but women love to plan things, or at least a lot of women do. And so
really? I hadn't noticed.
yeah, I'm not quite that much. I'm organized, and at work, I like to plan things out a little bit, but at home, that's not my deal. But a lot of women, when they get engaged, oh my God, I get to plan a wedding. So there's that. And then once the wedding is over, that's their opportunity to move on to having kids and planning out all that stuff because they're done planning something. It's time to plan something else. And I feel like that's his deal is that he doesn't have anything on this hand, so he's got to do something on this hand. And I just feel like it seems like a stopgap for him, although I think it's also a good idea. So that's my thought on that storyline, at least.
Yeah, I am curious. And my thought is that even though you can stop official communication, you can't stop all communication. So
Okay.
there will be people kind of their version of a shortwave radio or whatever it is that they'll be able to catch this somewhere.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
and then,
I look at
yeah,
it as like pirate radio.
yeah,
All
that's what
righty.
I'm thinking of. It would be that. Okay. So we'll wait and see what happens. A lot of the time was spent at our friends in Mars. They are Marcus and
Franklin.
Franklin are there. They're trying to figure out, and basically the resistance in Mars is all over the place. I don't know if this was directly, but it feels like at least partly the IRA, right? The
Yeah.
idea of getting freedom. So there is bombings, there are things going on, and Marcus and Franklin are there in the middle. So Lou, thoughts about them on Mars?
I appreciated the sentiment of what was going on here, but for me, the reason why this section really didn't work is because I didn't find that the speeches that Franklin and what's the other guy's name?
Marcus.
Yeah.
Marcus gave were all that inspiring. I'm watching the scene and I'm waiting for that. Okay, let's rally the troops. And I just didn't find the speech that Franklin gave was that inspiring. Like I'm thinking of when Star Trek, the original series, Tomorrow is Yesterday, when they have to decide whether or not they're going to allow the Sargons to take over their bodies. And Kirk goes, "Risk is our business. That's why we're out here." I didn't
Yeah.
get that kind of vibe from the scene at all. It just felt very pedestrian. But and if that doesn't work, like when I'm putting myself in the position of the people in the resistance or whoever those people were in the crowd, and I'm going, you ain't telling me nothing here that's going to get me motivated to join your alliance. I just didn't find that speech motivating or inspiring in any way, really. So it just didn't work for me. And I hate to come off so negative on an episode, but it's just like all these things, like if they're not clicking, then it's just not going to work for me. And I don't know how you guys felt about it. Did you think those speeches were inspiring? Like I didn't find them.
Nope.
Karen,
I
I'll let
didn't
you go first.
I didn't even find them compelling.
Yeah, yeah.
Just nothing. And they made it seem like Franklin was this great strategist with this speech that, oh, I haven't heard from John, but I'm gonna fake it. Just number one, the chick had a more compelling speech, and it wasn't even a speech.
When she
You
was
know,
tearing that hole in that guy?
you're
Yeah, yeah.
that was a more compelling talk than any of the quote unquote motivational speaking
And she was a
things.
good
And
character until she failed the Bechtel test.
oh, huge. She failed it 1,000,000%. Not that there's any scenes with two women, but that's definitely a failure there. I I don't get where they're gonna turn any minds there on Mars. I know it'll happen, but to me, if I was that dude, number two or whatever, yeah, number two is right. I don't know that I would care. And I think your parallel to the IRA is very good because the IRA at most times didn't care who they killed. It was just a way to continue to stay as a threat.
Yeah.
To the other side of their argument.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot. And as far as I know, the IRA was still active in the 90s, right? It might have been the tail end of their activities. But anyway, yeah, no, I agree with you, Lou. No, I wouldn't turn any minds.
I believe that there have been, and we have talked about it on this podcast, there have been times where both Sinclair and Sheridan and Delenn, among others, have had amazing speeches.
Hmm.
Carr has amazing speeches. I know that they're eligible, that this is capable. I think it's a nice thing that you know, he bluffed that we're going to give Mars his independence, though that does leave some questions. How, right? How do we know that the next leader of Earth or the government is going to be able to do this, right? But even that said, it was okay. I just didn't think, like I said, I thought there was a little overacting on these scenes. I'm glad that Franklin got to go to the honeymoon suite or whatever with number one, and they're a cute couple. And Marcus continues to be Sir Galahad, pure of heart and pure in body. So I just think you could have executed that a little bit better. But the plus side is they have Mars on their side at least now, and they've stopped them from killing innocents. And we'll see whenever the big battle happens against Earth, you now have, it would appear, Earth's biggest colony on your side.
Yeah, I didn't like that number one Franklin thing at all.
Oh, tell me more.
No, thank you.
Okay.
It's not that I don't think they'd be an attractive couple. I just didn't get where it came from.
Yeah.
It came so much out of left field. I was like, okay.
And
why didn't
sorry,
go ahead.
I was
No,
gonna say,
no.
and then when she says, "Oh, I'd like to invite you for dinner, but I'm sorry, Marcus, you need to go on guard duty." Like, serious, come
Is
on.
that necessary? Really?
It's so blatant.
And why didn't she just say, "Hey, I'd like to go to dinner with you," period?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
did she have to make a big deal about sending Marcus out on guard duty?
And what was he guarding? Like, he could hear
Right.
them. Like, where was he?
I don't
Right.
know.
That didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So now it's like every time I see him doing that now, I think it's his version of wanking off.
Yeah.
I think of it as more like a fidget spinner.
That was
where he's just
that end note on that whole storyline with number one and Franklin was really clunky
just
and
dumb.
in fact, I found it rather embarrassing.
A little bit.
I assume she didn't. I am coloring in the lines, right?
Mhm.
She didn't want to be rude and say, "Hey, Marcus, I really want to have a little cha-ching, a little bit of hanky-panky."
Yeah, but she was rude.
Yeah,
that's the
just
whole
to
thing.
say,
She was
yeah, hey,
rude.
you need guard duty. And I do think it was Marcus love to. And it was cute, the 50 credits and touch passion when it comes your way. Then we've got the whole "Oh, Steven." So that's
Gross.
2 episodes in a row where we find out what people say when they're
Yeah. And
getting,
I hated that Wahoo thing also
Yes.
in the last episode. Just
Yeah.
so dumb. It's a juvenile way to write romance.
Yeah.
Romance isn't Wahoo or
Yeah.
oh, Steven. It's just not. And he could have made it, and I hesitate to use this, but a little sexier.
Yeah.
And to me, it was played for comedy, but it didn't work. Yeah.
And that's part of the problem is they talk about if you try to go dramatic and it doesn't work, you get slightly. But if you go for comedy and it doesn't work, it just won't work.
Right.
All right. So
Bad.
the last kind of storyline is I also just don't think the execution worked really well. Delenn's got to go, right? They're hearing about these planets being attacked. They've got to go figure out what's happening. Once again, don't know why it's she, but she has to. They go and they get what I think is as equal to some of the cheesiest Doctor Who classic episodes of special effects. This Drakh,
Oh, it was terrible.
where they're shimmering, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
shimmering.
And we turn out that they were the shadow underlings. They were shadow supporters, and that now that they know that Delenn is there, Minbari, they're going to want to kill them. They end up not killing him, blah, 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 blah. We now have a new villain. Karen.
Villain. I'm doing air quotes around things today. Okay, so you mentioned bad special effects. He was supposed to be phasing in and out, right? Which that's a shadow thing. But to me, it just looked blurry. It just looked like they blurred him and badly.
And in real life, what was told is that they did not like how the costume came out. So the special effects decided to do this to make it just seem a little more alien.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That whole thing on the White Star, I think it could have been a much better story. And I don't understand. Okay, Delenn is first and foremost what? Diplomat.
Yeah, she is the religious caste.
And religious. How would she know this? If Lanier had come out and said something about the Drakh going on their ship, they're going to try and kill you, that would have made more sense to me because Lanier has a more analytical mind. And I think Delenn thinks with her heart instead of her brain more. I'm not saying she's dumb. I'm just saying she's not that kind of a thinker. When the Drakh was on board, there's this whole, oh, how did he know our language? Come on, really? That's the thing you pick up on? It just didn't seem terribly believable to me, which always takes me out of the story. And the dude, I can't remember his name.
Farrell.
No, the Farrell. Thank you. Yeah. Whatever. It's all I can say about him. Milk toasty, easily swayed. I thought they were smarter than that as a race. He comes from
yes.
Zahadun.
Zahadun.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's not get in bed with them.
Yeah.
And so now, and I understand they did this to put forward that story of the lurkers or whatever they're called, the brain eater things. I don't remember what they're called because I just didn't care as much. So they're setting that up, that these people are the ones that have the parasites and blah, blah, blah is all I can say about that storyline. Yeah. And here's the thing I hated the worst.
Okay, tell me.
Here is the will they, won't they for this. They're doing will they, won't they, but they've already gotten together on John and Delenn. And I just hate it. I hate it. Why would she decide she was going to go back and be on the Great Council when there are so many other people she could find to do that? She has to go and do it right after this whole war, and when John needs her support and they've just started this relationship. It just didn't make any sense to me why she would be doing that. So
yeah,
that's my feeling on the whole thing.
Yes, there's crap going down in Minbari. She talked about that she's ignored the home world. Now she's got to go and fix it. And I think the reality is that's partly because she has this, we go all the way back to Sebastian testing her, the idea that she has a Masonic complex the same way John does in a lot of ways. I'm the only one that can fix this. I am the one that needs to do this. So that's how I explain that. But
sure, but I get that. That's how they meant it to be. But
is that necessarily a good thing? Yeah. And it would have been interesting, as we're rewriting a show that's many years old, right? If Lanier had been her representative and gone to fix things, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we could still have Billy Mummy on the show. We could just show him on Minbar.
Yeah.
Doing things on Minbar. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't get it. What about you, Lou?
Yeah.
I'll point out the one interesting aspect of this storyline was Delenn calling back to when she first met humans and ordered the attack impulsively. Here she takes a step back and says, no, let's find out exactly what's going on here. I don't want to repeat that mistake. Yeah. I thought that was good. But the whole scenario with the disposable villains, the Drakh, just seems like a waste of time or a stalling thing. I think it would have been much more interesting if she had just gone directly to Minbari and started getting
Yeah.
into this whole political situation right off the bat. Why do we need this intermediary step that doesn't go anywhere? Except I guess JMS wanted to show that Delenn had learned from her previous experience when they had opened fire on the humans. So there's that aspect of it. You could make an argument for why this was set up the way it was, but we don't know who the Drakh are. There's no built-in enmity towards this race of characters. They're just another prop, really, and that was really borne home by that bad special effects. Yeah, so I just didn't care about the storyline, and I just would have preferred that she had gone directly to Minbari, or if she had run into some warrior casts, Minbari out doing something in space, that for whatever reason they were the ones that were attacking the other race that was a non-aggressive agrarian culture. I can't remember what their name was, but so it just there was nothing there to really grab you emotionally, because it was just like, okay, who are these characters and what are they up to? And then boom, it's all over with, and that's, oh, okay, so they weren't really that important in the overall story arc of the series.
Was it the Pakmara
Something like that. I don't know.
that was being threatened? Okay.
Yeah.
Pack rats or whatever they were called. I don't know. But
Yeah, the Carrion, right? They're the ones with the
okay.
Oh, they ate the
tusk.
carrion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I often unofficially judge an episode by going to Lurker's Guide and seeing
don't
how
telling
much,
us.
no, to see how much
Okay.
under the last thing is JMS speaks, is how many questions he got about this episode and how much he gave behind the scenes information.
Mhm.
Why did Franklin send a video message was one question.
Okay.
About the Drakh ships, White Star 16 wasn't too tough. Why did Delenn run? Those are the only comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is not a lot of background on this, so I just don't think there's a lot of depth.
So we're not alone then.
No, we are not. Yeah. Though we'll give our ratings in a minute, but I am a little shocked at how high some people gave this one. So yeah. Any other thoughts we need to cover?
No, literally no.
Yeah.
No.
I do think there is things that are coming forward and that's going to happen, but this is really, I think, a very transition episode that I think we could have skipped very easily. That this one could have said, hey, Mars is now on our side and Delenn needs to go back to Minbar to fix some crap.
Yeah, I feel like the information we got in this could have definitely just been fit into another episode with bigger stories.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm gonna go first, and I'm gonna say I want to go even lower, but I'm gonna just go out of kindness. 7 out of 10 awkward romantic dinners. Karen?
That is out of kindness. Yeah. I'm giving it 6 fidget Denbox, which is that.
I like that. Yeah.
His weapon.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. All right, Lou?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it 6 crossed wires of communication.
Nice. The P5 rating on Lurker's Guide to Babylon, 8.3.
Oh my
God.
Wow. I know. I mean,
wow.
I really am a little surprised, right?
Yeah.
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 We've provided a lot of fodder for feedback for our listeners.
Yes.
I'm sure we're going to get some nasty comments about our overall opinion of this episode.
And as always, I would love, we're going to give you in just a minute how to reach us, how to post this, how to do it. I would love to hear from emails from people or post on our YouTube channel.
Yeah. I love to
missed.
see counterpoints.
Yeah, I do too.
Because maybe we missed some important thing.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sure we missed something important because we haven't seen anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. We only got one email. Thank you, Texas Alashak. As always, we appreciate your consistency. You are good people. So you want to take that over, Karen?
Sure. I say great people.
Deeply.
So it is from Texas Alashak, and he says, so Sheridan is still winding himself up over ISN, but he finally comes up with an idea, which is to start his own little news network. which is traditionally how all the various news outlets started back in the day. Some reporter wanted to print some article or another. Their outlet refused, so they went and started their own and printed whatever they wanted. In the meantime, Franklin and Marcus managed to get the resistance together and make their pitch. We learn a bit about Mars' history. I'm sorry, I moved too far. Including that Sheridan has actually fought against Marsies before. He's willing to let that go if they are, and he has a major promise for them, their independence. If they assist him, there has been talk on other podcasts about if that was from Sheridan or if it was Franklin going off script. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it was. He says, I don't think it was. That would be something Sheridan would specifically tell him to offer. It's also why they needed someone from the command staff. They needed to know for certain this came from the top. Either it came from Sheridan himself or Franklin just put him in a chokehold that he can't get out of, which Sheridan may have counted on now that I think about it. Elsewhere, Delenn is dealing with some fallout from the dissolution of the Grey Council. The warrior caste feel they are no longer obligated to fulfill promises that were made by the religious caste, and so have left several worlds that have depended on Minbari protection to fend for themselves. But that just turns out to be the tip of the iceberg. Minbar itself is on the brink of full-blown civil war. But before that, she has to deal with a new threat, the Drakh, allies of the shadows who now seek to fill the void left by their masters. Again, we see the what comes after happily ever after coming into play. The evil overlord has been deposed, but what comes to take his place? And how will this affect everything going forward? Time will tell, but in the meantime, let us consider options that are so obvious only an idiot could possibly not think of them. All righty. This is the Texas on the Shock signing off until Zavene in Valen's name. Consider
Very nice.
options that are so obvious only an idiot could possibly not think of them. Yeah, that
Okay.
has me intrigued.
All right. If someone wants to reach
Anything on the YouTube?
yeah, Karen. Thank you, Lou. Appreciate it. Any?
Yeah, we had a couple. Texas was in their comment sections as well on the YouTube channel. And he felt that Franklin was chosen to go to Mars because he's part of the command staff. Someone lower than that wouldn't cut it with the resistance. They needed someone who had enough authority on his own. And Mr. D. Delenn disagrees, and he really feels that only Marcus was needed to go because we've already seen Rangers working on Mars. I think that my position on Franklin going is I don't think in this type of a situation, doctors are considered command structure type people. You want more actual command structure type leaders as opposed to medical wing. They obviously have a very important function to do, but they're not typically the ones making policy decisions and things of that nature. They're more of a support function. So I really don't think Franklin is the right person to be going there. But I think you can argue on either side of it. So it's just interesting that we got some feedback on that point. And the other one that we got feedback on was from John Austin talking about the Sheridan Garibaldi conflicts. And he feels that it's more on Garibaldi's side than Sheridan's side. But I think the way they structured those two scenes, because they made Sheridan go overboard in his anger reaction in the first encounter, and then they made Garibaldi go overboard with his reaction to the woman fawning over Sheridan. So I think it was a balancing act, but I still think the initial meeting between the two of them was Sheridan was way overboard in his reaction. Thank you for the feedback, John, and I don't want to fight with you either, but I'm not gonna let it go either.
We can agree to
To
disagree.
disagree. Yep.
All right, Lou, if someone wants to agree with us, disagree with us, debate, update, how can they?
They can do that at YouTube at Loser Views, where you'll find the episodes of the Babylon 5 podcast that we're doing, along with our JKL Media podcast, where we're just going to be finishing off The Watchmen today. And the next one we're going to do, Jesse, is what? We Are the World?
Yeah, the next thing we're going to do, and this is going to be a special dual podcast. I'm going to put this out on Set Listing Bruce as well. There is a new documentary that's been released the past month or so on the Greatest Night of Pop. It is a behind the scenes of making of We Are the World. And Bruce Springsteen is interviewed, Cyndi Lauper is interviewed, Lionel Richie, and it's a really fun documentary. So we're going to discuss that off our normal genre area, but then I'm going to release that on Set Lusting Bruce and on this JKL Media.
We've talked about music before, so
We have
cool.
talked about
that's
music.
all good.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also, you can find on the YouTube channel my writer interview podcast, as well as our Stephen King podcast. And on Twitter, you can find me at Lou W. Sitzma, Sytsma.
Good. And Karen, how about you?
I am at Eleveria, Aleveria, most places, even on Goodreads. That's who I am. So feel free to look me up there. All the social medias. YouTube, I'm at Eleveria. Also, I don't have anything on my channel there. So yeah, that's me. And there's a link in my bio on Twitter to other links. And one of them is to my blog, alleystuff.com.
Very nice. I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter, X. You can find me, Jesse Jackson in Louisville, Texas, on Facebook. I would love for you to check out the Set Listing Bruce, where we were talking music. I just had creator, writer, editor, inker Jimmy Palomino. Yeah, Palmiotti, thank you.
Married to Amanda
Palmer.
Palmer.
Connor.
Right,
Yes.
sorry.
And really fun interview about his work with a lot of the different, his comics, working with Kevin Smith, him and Amanda helping with Harley Quinn. So massive Springsteen fan joined me. We had a really good time. So that's pretty good.
Let me add something there real quick. Jimmy Palmiotti and J.G. Jones and Amanda all sat together at conventions a lot. I did some work for J.G. Jones a little bit, nothing big, web stuff. And I got to know them really well way back in the early 2000s. And I believe, along with George Perez, they are the nicest people, creators at conventions. They will sit there and talk to you, and they don't ignore anyone. And I love the things that they've done. The Pro by Amanda is really great. And they did a series. It's about a golem. I can't remember the name of it, but it's just, it's so sweet. And I watched that episode on YouTube that you just put up. Yeah. And again, he's an amazing person. So I love them. It was a great interview. And
thank you. Yeah, he was someone I'd been wanting to do on, and he was very nice enough to join me, and I had a blast. So good. All right, cool. All right. Also coming up, I had two guys that are working to get Cyndi Lauper on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And awesome. They were a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun talking to them. All right. We will be back next week. Hopefully we get a better Babylon 5 episode. Also, if you're on this feed, we're wrapping up our Watchmen discussion, as Lou just mentioned, and that is going to be a great one. So for now, be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yay. All right.
And scene.